Well, Mpo, Eskom has painstakingly been giving reasons for its 20.5% tariff increase application to the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, and all these interested groups that are gathered here today. Groups which have, been voicing their concerns around this yet again price increase which Eskom is applying for. You'll remember that, there's been a more than 300% price increase in electricity prices since load shedding began in 2008. And, this is something which, all the concerned groups which I spoke about are concerned about really. So, I'm standing with the CFO of Eskom right now. I want to try and get some answers on your application to Nersa. I mean, there were a lot of technical terms and phrases in your presentation to the energy regulator, but, questions to ordinary South Africans are very simplistic. You are now applying for a 20.5% tariff increase. Why? That's what a lot of people will want to know.
Yeah, thank you. And the reason is it costs money to produce electricity. So effectively the application says the cost of recovering those operational costs, that needs to be recovered from the regulator and effectively the consumer. And then over and above that, we've got the 400 billion debt that was mentioned. We need to service that. If we can't service it as Eskom, we would then have to approach government and national treasury to basically fill the gap. And as I've indicated in my closing, National Treasury has already given us commitments, and they're saying basically they don't have any more appetite for further commitments.
The debt the astronomical debt I should mention that you speak about, has largely been attributed to mismanagement of funds within the power utility and some acts of corruption. This is what some interested groups such as AfriForum have been saying. So the question then becomes, why should the public be responsible for your debt, essentially?
So I think firstly the 400 billion debt, a large function of that is building Medupi, Kusile and Ingula. And you will recall that when Eskom started that build program, we didn't get, like a normal business will get a share injection in terms of a rights issue. And the assumption was made that prices were going to increase earlier. So effectively, as we incurred the capital expenditure on those programs, it built up the debt in the balance sheet where we find it now. We acknowledge, yes, around corruption and fraud. As the new board and management, we are addressing that. You've seen certain recoveries, criminal charges we've placed, and also through the Zondo Commission reports that will come out end of January, end of February. The board, we're very clear, we need to deal with it, but we also need law enforcement agencies to come to the conclusion. And last but not least, when Eskom recovers from these fraudulent activities, we then give it back to the consumer in subsequent applications.
We cannot speak about all these increases without factoring in the socio-economic challenges of our country, and yet the power utility is convinced that current prices in South Africa are relatively low compared to other developed countries. But like I said, have you considered the socio-economic challenges of our own country in your application?
Yeah, so from our perspective, and as I've said in these hearings, that's an important factor. There are certain mechanisms that in our application, the first two blocks of Eskom's tariffs, that limits the impact on that category of customers. We support that Nersa continuously looks to implement that and potentially look to increase that. But from transparency perspective, if one consumer pays less, someone else is going to fit the bill. But like we've indicated that we believe this issue around affordability and the socio-economic, it's wider than Eskom and Nersa, and this requires a political and a policy discussion going forward.
I see. Well, thank you so much for your time. That's Eskom CFO, Mr. Khalib Kasim, taking us into confidence as to the reasons behind the application. But you see, the thing is, This 20.5% will not be enough for the power utility, to offset its cost, operational costs, and debt service costs. Its own projections have been that in the next year they will need yet another 15% increase, followed by another 10% in 2024. So this has become a perfect whirlwind with no apparent end in sight, Mpo.